Welcome to the podcast. My name is Father Bill W. I'm an Episcopal priest here in Austin, Texas, and I've had the gift of recovery since December the 27th of 1972. Very grateful to that program of Alcoholics Anonymous for bringing me that gift and for all the people who helped me and guided me all along the way. Many of them have gone to the big meeting in the sky, but they'll never be forgotten, at least not by this alcoholic. I want to thank you guys for staying with me. This is probably the final episode, hopefully, on this book that we're going through. It's titled Living Between Worlds, Finding Personal Resilience in Changing Times. The author is Dr. James Hollis. Boy, I've spent more weeks on this thing than I had intended in the beginning, and I know it's deep material, and if you've stayed with me for this far through the series, you are to be congratulated. And I've done more reading than commenting on this because I think Hollis has a way of expressing himself that's really unique. He takes difficult Jungian material and tries to explain it in ways that I have found very, very helpful. Still not easy, but more helpful than maybe going directly to Jung. Many people have written me saying they've enjoyed the series. So if you stayed with it, God bless you. You've done good. I hope you'll read the book. And I've read it several times and always take something away. All right. We are on the last chapter now, and his chapter is titled A Map to Meaning, What We Can Learn from Jung. And so he's going to give 7 or 8 major takeaways from the study of depth psychology. And you got to remember, one of the reasons I'm doing this is because Jung played a really important role in the development of AA. When Wilson and he corresponded back and forth, Wilson commented how indebted AA is to him, that Roland Hazard, his patient, was sent by him in search of a spiritual awakening, a spiritual experience, a psychic change. The more you delve into Jung, the more you understand, what did he mean by that? What was he sending Roland to experience? Did he want him to join a church? I don't think so. He wanted him to have an encounter with the divine. And I think that resonates throughout the whole 12-step program. It's a journey. It's a journey which begins in pain and leads ultimately to union with that which is greater than ourselves. Call it a spiritual experience, spiritual awakening, but it's that coming together of that which was separated. So might have to break this thing into 2 episodes, but we'll just kind of see how it goes. Let's jump in. He begins, of all modern thinkers, as will come as no surprise to the reader, I consider Carl Jung the person who reflected most deeply on the meaning of this short visitation we call our lives. He appreciated the timeless dimensions of our psyche, the region in which the same psychic structuring process courses through each of us, past and present. He labeled this energy field the collective unconscious. I think in the program we might call it the 4th dimension of reality or of existence, that there exists a domain that we do have access to. It's not our normal, usual level of consciousness. But if we work the program, it is what is going to be revealed to us during the course of our sobriety. So, he says part of what Jung saw in the records of the human psyche, East and West, past and present, was the archetype of the transcendent other, sometimes called God or the gods. The faces of God, the creeds and practices surrounding any personal or tribal experience of the transcendent other will vary, will come and go. What is timeless is that large other that we intuit as a species. It says in the book, deep down in every man and woman and child, don't remember the exact quote, deep down in each of us, there exists the idea of God. It may be covered over by this, that, and the other thing, but way down, if you'll dig down deep enough, it exists. And that's, I think, this very same thing that Hollis is saying here. For this reason, he considered religion neither an infantile regression, as Freud did, nor the opiate of the masses, as Marx did. He interpreted the data of historical record, the processes of his patients, and his own experience as an inherent desire for meaningful connection to that which is larger than we. I'm going to repeat that phrase. I think it's an important one. An inherent desire for meaning, for meaningful connection to that which is larger than we. The first three steps are all about connection. People who are disconnected, disjointed, out in the wilderness, not a part of humanity. We're sitting at the end of the bar or in an alley or in a dope house or whatever it might be, wherever we wind up. We're not a part of the whole. We don't feel like we're a part of the whole. And that's where we begin the journey. And it's good to know by the people who've gone before us that it's possible. It's possible to find that joining, that connection, if we will stay the course. And that's going to be an important part of the journey itself. So first three steps, all about connection. I'm disconnected. I'm at a bottom. I'm powerless. Life's unmanageable. And then I begin the journey, 2 and 3. That it's possible there could be a God. Possible there could be an other with a capital O. Don't get hung up on the concept, on the word. All right? As if we would understand it. Somebody once said, who was trying to help people with their God image stuff, he said, "Tell me about the God you don't believe in." And people would tell him about the God they don't believe in. And invariably his answer would be, "Well, I don't believe in that God either." If we try to put into words what can't be put into words, we're going to blow it. So we got to stop trying. We just come, and this would be pure Jungian stuff, to believe in the other, and not even just to believe in it, but to have a felt experience of it. And that's the transcendence that we are each and every one of us capable of. So, that's step 2. Step 3 is I begin a relationship with this, made a decision, turned our lives and our will over to the care of this mysterious other that we don't understand, we don't know. If we did, we wouldn't have to do these damn steps. We'd just be home free, but we're not. So we're going to establish a relationship with this other self, this inner self. And that's the journey, guys. That's it. And you can establish that very, very quickly. One of the things I learned from the history was you can do steps 2 and 3 in about a minute and a half. Boom, boom, and then in the presence of another person, you make that commitment, take the third step with them. As we briefly saw in the preceding chapters, the erosion of tribal and institutional images that once possessed the power to link our ancestors with the transcendent energies of the cosmos has left millions of moderns reaching for secular surrogates. Jung noted that what we call depth psychology had to be invented towards the end of the 19th century to help individuals who had fallen out of the collective practices into the wasteland. If you are not connected to the transcendent, you're going to feel it. You're going to feel restless, irritable, discontent, disconnected. And religion, by and large, has lost its ability as an institution to join us with that. And so what he's saying here is that this is the reason that depth psychology had to be invented, if you will. That in days past, it was just a given that we were connected to the divine. I spent a little bit of time, not much at all, but a little bit of time in India, and I hit it on a feast day, and I saw millions and millions of people participating in a ritual, in ceremonies that connected them as a people to the other, to the beyond that is within. All right. But we've lost that in many instances in Western Europe and in the United States. Participation in that kind of thing, it just doesn't seem to make sense anymore. All right. So that's what he's saying here, that depth psychology had to be invented to give us a vehicle for doing this. Now, if you can do it via religion, go for it. You know, I remember coming across a quote from Jung. Somebody in the Oxford group was coming to see him. They were active member of the Oxford group, but they needed psychological help. His comment to them was, why do you come and see me? You go to Jesus. I can't do it better than Jesus. I'm sure he was joking, but he was serious at the same time. That he's identifying there what is the missing link. He said, patients who come to see him in the second half of life, it's always one thing that is present. Whatever the symptom might be, they've lost their connection to the divine. They've lost access to the spirit world. And so neuroses pop up. Psychosomatic illnesses and somatic illnesses pop up. And unless and until we can do this, and we in 12-step are really blessed. I mean, thank God we've been given our own little roadmap in terms of the journey we have to travel. And I traveled that journey for 20 years. But it still wasn't enough. And when I got introduced to the Oxford group and introduced to the origins of the spiritual dimensions of the program, how it looked in the earliest days, it opened me up to that fourth dimension that I had not been able to access prior to then. So he says, though he began as a psychiatrist, this is Hollis, working in a psychiatric ward talking about Jung, that specialized in schizophrenia and the various pathologies of the human soul, Jung, evolved in his own understanding through and beyond the merely medical model to recognize that only when we engage the numinous, the spirit world, only when we engage that in our lives, can we reframe our suffering and find its meaning. Say that, you can go without water, you can go without food for X number of days. You can't go long without meaning. All right? we go crazy. We are meaning-seeking animals. That's a good definition of a human being. A meaning-seeking animal. And that's a tough balance, to balance the animal side of ourselves with the spirit side of ourselves. You know, only creatures that seem to be tasked with that job in the world. It's a tough one. He goes on, as do I. I'll watch that. I have more than once said to clients that what we hoped to achieve together was an enlargement that comes from taking life on, from leaving behind lesser roadmaps and stratagems, and in the end, having a more interesting life, a more meaningful and fulfilled life. In the following pages and topics, I ask you to absorb these few of Jung's many profound observations and consider how they might help you find greater meaning in the conduct of your daily, ever-changing life. So he lists 7 or 8, and we're going to go through them one at a time. These are the big picture items, okay? It's not just I learned this little thing or that little thing. Each one of these needs to be thought about, reflected on, meditated on. Spend some time with these. All right? So the first one. The real issues of life are never solved, but they may be outgrown. All right? The real issues of life are never solved, but they may be outgrown. It is the natural desire and tendency of conscious life to solve problems and then move on. This proclivity does indeed lead to the resolution of many, if not most, of life's dilemmas, but not of the ones that matter most. How often the old adage, sleep on it, brings a measure of relief the next day when we have been able to step out of the emotional morass and reframe it in some way. Our unconscious has also worked on it to provide a new perspective. Notable artistic and scientific discoveries have risen out of this outer-inner world dialectic, this back and forth dialogue, all right, between the unconscious mind and the conscious mind, all right? Why do we need sleep? We need a break from this reality to go to what? To go to a very different reality, a very different reality. And we've lost contact with the value of that reality. That's basic to Jungian therapy. Clearly, some autonomous energy within us continues to work on a problem and often comes up with perspectives, even avenues of resolution, unknown to conscious life. A sponsor told me, never trust a thought, that when you're trying to go to sleep and you're worried about this, that, and the other thing, you're up till 2 o'clock in the morning. Never trust a thought that comes when you're awake after 9 o'clock at night. The worry goblins come out. This goes wrong. That can go wrong. Where am I going to get this? But if I go to sleep on it, something healing can happen to me. All right? That's his point. Still, many of life's issues are not solvable. For example, sometimes tons of trauma remain in our system and send up bubbles to trouble our days, just as a sunken ocean liner releases its flotsam for decades. Parentheses, the USS Arizona is still leaking oil at Pearl Harbor after nearly 80 years. Close parentheses. Sometimes betrayals profound losses, roads not taken, continue to haunt us and cloud the present. We will never solve these experiences, for they are always part of our psychoactive history. But consciously, we can attend to the business of living in the present, asking the question, what does this old, persisting problem make me do or keep me from doing? That obliges us to take responsibility for what spills into the world through us. So many of us just stay stuck in the past. We allow traumas to define us, all right? They are painful, and they're going to stay with us. That's what he's saying. Betrayals, hurtful things that have happened to us, they're not going to go away, but they don't have to debilitate us. They don't have to suck us under and pull us down, all right? Some years ago, in a book called Swamplands of the Soul, I suggested that our periodic visitations to dismal places, depression, loss, betrayal, grief, and so on, were part of the human condition from which none of us is exempt. But to move beyond a posturing of outrage at life's betrayal, we are called to ask another question. To what present task is this swampland calling me? Asking this question moves us from a posture of victimhood to engagement with the unfolding of our destiny. Without this move, fate triumphs over destiny. You've heard the expression, we don't have to worry about hell because we've been there as alcoholics and addicts. There's a gift. There's a gift in our past. And the literature says that sometimes it's our only asset, that we have been to the bottom. All right? That's a gift if we can utilize it, if we cannot stay stuck there, but ask the question, having been to this bottom, what is that asking of me now? What is that freeing me up to do now? Where is that calling me to go now? He says the ego consciousness is dismayed by this fact. He says the ego consciousness is dismayed by this fact, but is obliged to enlarge to deal with it. All right, let's just pull that one apart. That's an important sentence. The ego is stumped by our pains, our traumas, our past. And it can go under as a result of that. There's no question. Or it can enlarge itself. The idea isn't to get rid of the ego. The idea in Jungian psychology, and I believe in 12-step recovery, is to enlarge the ego. Enlarge it not in the sense of it's taking on huge dimensions of inflation, but to expand in its ability to live with the pain that it experienced, put that to use for others. I don't even know if I'll be able to say that again. But it's like you can't get rid of your ego, but it can enlarge. So our hearts can grow larger. They're able, after time, to live with the pain that seemed unbearable. Okay? And this is wisdom. And this is wisdom that only comes, I think, with time. That the real issues are never solved, but they may be outgrown. I think back to my early days in recovery, and I'd see people with a year, 3 years, 10 years recovery was unimaginable to me. How did they do it? How can I do it? Is it ever going to be possible for me? And one day at a time, you stay with this thing. You get through it. You endure. You persist. And soon there's an enlarging of the personality that is happening. People will see it in you before you see it in yourself. And it's an amazing thing. You know, it's the gift that we in 12-step have, that it's precious and it's priceless. Whoever would have thought that it's the pain that enlarged our hearts and then made us what? Available to other people. That as we see them hurting in the same way that we were hurting. You know, and that was the thing that they would tell me, you know, when I'd come, oh my God, this is just awful. My sponsor would say, Bill, you're hurting in all the right areas. I don't know why I took some solace in that, but I did. Well, I guess I'm on the right road, you know? Okay. So, the real issues of life are never solved, but they may be outgrown. Number 2, the cure for loneliness is solitude. Even when we are surrounded by people, we are alone. Alone with our bodies, alone with our spirits, our fears, and our individualized summons to step into our journeys. There was a rush of expectation with the vast transformation of our society by social media and by the internet itself. To be sure, we have greater access to each other now. We can find each other more easily, but we can also annoy each other more incessantly, intrude more abruptly, and use and abuse each other more profoundly by bombarding folks with unwanted, commercial, religious, political, sentimentalized, and tribal chaff. Whatever the human imprint advances, the shadow follows apace. For all the connectivity the modern electronic world offers, and I do appreciate that gift, I also perceive that we are more atomized, more disconnected from each other than ever before. Loneliness can catalyze as a disease or a blessing, depending upon the psychology we bring to it. The flight from aloneness can also be seen as a flight from ourselves. Where we were once connected to the heartbeat of the universe, we're going back to the womb here, where once we were connected to the heartbeat of the universe, with all needs met, we were abruptly, traumatically flung at birth into primal separation, not unlike an astronaut, spacewalker, whose tether breaks and drifts off and away from the mothership. One can imagine that much of life is trying to merge again with that primal other, seeking to feel safe, protected, and nurtured. There's nothing wrong with those needs, of course, but when they prevail, the treatment plan, and by treatment plan here, he means the treatment plan that we come up with, right, that the ego comes up with. That ego's treatment plan often sabotages our growing up, undermines that which we are meant to bring into the world as individuating souls. For example, such an urge to merge keeps people in terrible relationships because they fear being alone, or it keeps them from standing for their values for fear of rejection. While these fears are natural and common, they also represent an abrogation of our summons to become ourselves more fully. Even when we think we are set and secure, life can tear that other away through death, divorce, disability, or choice. Attachment is always attached to loss. Attachment is always attached to loss. Moreover, we could make the case that perfect parenting is characterized by having offered first reassurances and then progressive abandonment, titrated to fit the child's increasing capacity to manage for his or herself. Just as abandonment creates lifelong insecurities, so clinging to a child, hovering, creates dependencies and sends the silent message, you can't manage this life on your own. You always need me to help. The generation produced by contemporary helicopter parents who, if the kid gets in the slightest bit of trouble, they're going to helicopter in and rescue him or her. This generation produced by contemporary helicopter parents will not fare well in the real world that awaits them. No parent ever gets it right. We've got to protect them, and then at the same time, we've got to let go of them. And if we try to protect too much, we injure them. And if we don't protect them enough, we can injure them too. I think the truth is, and I think this is good Jungian interpretation, we all get injured. You can't avoid getting injured. And in the first half of life, we kind of collect our injuries. And then if we're blessed, if we're fortunate enough, and this is certainly true for those of us in recovery, we come to a point where we say, all right, what am I going to do about it now? What am I going to do about it? Is it time to grow up? Is it time to change the course? Most people stay stuck. That's the truth. But some people really grow. And I think that's what the Jungian thing is about. It's techniques, maps. Maps is better than techniques, probably. For learning the psyche, the soul, how it got damaged, finding an inner voice that is going to lead me through the pain and into spiritual, emotional, psychic maturity. That's the journey. That's the journey. While friends, partners, and associations with others can be supportive, challenging, and dialectically developmental, it is also true that we grow most when we are on our own, when we have to figure out our path, when we have to find the courage to live it. Staying plugged in, merging with others, surrounding ourselves with noise of all kinds. All these flights from being with ourselves. And yet the only cure for loneliness is solitude. When we achieve solitude, we are not alone when we are alone. We are present to ourselves, and we have an earnest dialogue transpiring with the other, who is also us. Jung put it best when he wrote this. The highest and most decisive experience of all is to be alone with one's own self, or whatever else one chooses to call the objectivity of the psyche. Be alone with your soul. The patient must be alone if he is to find out what it is that supports him when he can no longer support himself. Only this experience can give him an indestructible foundation. I remember, I'll never forget it, when I was studying about the Oxford group, and they said prayer and meditation was the thing in the early days of AA that were viewed by the pioneers as indispensable. that meetings were helpful, but prayer and meditation, being alone with what? With that supports us when we cannot support ourselves. Being alone, being in solitude with that is how the self starts to knit itself together. How I experience that I can survive this. Sometimes I'm not against meetings. I know people will say that about me, and I understand why they would say that. But I'm just convinced that prayer and meditation is, after a period of time, I don't think you go sit in the lotus position on day one. I think you got to be with the group. You got to go through all that. But there does come a time when we need to learn how to live with ourselves and not go running to the group or running to the sponsor or running to a therapist every time life throws us a curve. That's staying very immature. Now, some of us are sicker than others, and we may need that, and if that's your path, that's fine. But I think there are a great many of us who need to develop further, emotionally, spiritually, consciously. All right, and this is what I think Jung is tremendously helpful for. Another way to phrase that may be that we need to find what supports us when nothing supports us. That is, when the experience of the loss of the other is upon us and we are flush with separation anxiety, rather than run to the nearest safe harbor, we sit with it and sit it out. During that time, we learn, often to our surprise, that something rises within to support us. We will not perish, though we think we will. By bearing the unbearable, we go through the desert to arrive at a nurturing oasis we did not know was there. Wilson talked about, he tried to get over, under, around, every way but through his alcoholism. He had to go through it. And when you're going through it, it feels like you're going to die. But you're not going to die. It just feels that way. But if you can feel that and stay with that, something within each and every one of us is going to rise up in support of us. And this is the greater self, the greater personality, the great reality that is within. It's not out there. It's within. It's within, and it's also among. What's in me is in you. The question is, are you going to develop it? Are you going to develop a relationship with that? And then are you going to manifest that in the world? Because that's what you're here to do, and that is what I am here to do. The antidote to loneliness is letting go of the fantasy that the attachment to the other is necessary for our survival. Certainly the essence of pop music, especially country music, is that the other is necessary for one's survival, the loss of whom is catastrophic, and a good excuse to have another drink. The antidote is to know that there is no antidote to be found, ultimately, and that is okay. After all, I really like this section. After all, most relationships fail because we ask too much of them. Is it not possible that more relationships might survive if we asked less of them and more of ourselves? That is why Rilke defined a healthy relationship as a person being the guardian of the solitude of the other, of the partner. No matter how much we care or are cared for, we cannot live the other's life or spare them difficulty, nor can they spare us. what remains after the delusions are gone can be pretty wonderful. What remains after the delusions are gone. Pink cloud, I guess we call it. The pink cloud of recovery. Well, it's not going to last. But if you can stay through it, if you can stay after the pink cloud has gone away, then you're really going to reap the rewards of a mature spirituality. So it seems, he says in conclusion, solitude is an achievement, an aloneness that is not loneliness and that is not dependent on another to rescue us. Far from the narcissist's need for constant reassurance, solitude is the self-care system doing its proper job. It means we can tolerate being with ourselves. I'll read that one again. It means we can tolerate being with ourselves. And if that is the case, then perhaps others will be able to tolerate being with us also. The third thing we can learn from studying and practicing depth psychology is that our best, our most demanding, and our most useful job is addressing our own shadows. Hollis writes, "The world has never lacked for idealists. I am a recovering idealist myself. Of course, I still have ideals," he says, "but I have seen enough of the world now that I do not expect to see them realized, even though a good part of the value of my life is pursuing them nonetheless. The world has never lacked for utopian schemes, noble institutions, and people of the highest intentions. And yet, something always goes wrong. Putting it simply, no matter how noble or well-intended we or our institutions are, we always mess things up sooner or later. This perspective is not pessimistic. It is simply a factual observation of the whole bloody train of history." And he's talking not only about personal history, how we mess things up in our lives, but how our institutions mess things up as well. And we have to deal with that. We have to realize that. Because if we don't, then we are blind to it. So Hollis says that Jung knows where to place the blame for all of this self-destructive behavior. He blames it on you and on me. What he's saying here is that the problem lies inside of us. And it lies in the part of the mind that is unconscious, unaware of it, oblivious to it. And unless and until we can make this sabotaging, angry, destructive part of our minds available to consciousness, move it from the unconscious to the conscious. Unless we can do that, then this shadow stuff is never going to be realized, but it's going to cause great harm in the world. Okay, the shadow, he says, represents those elements, energies, and agendas in us that, when brought to consciousness, contradict our professed values. We're not aware of what's in the unconscious. If we were, it wouldn't be unconscious. I remember being told when I came into the program, "You're angry." I got really pissed at that. Told them where they could go. Angry me. I wasn't aware of it. Totally unaware of the amount of anger that was in my shadow, all right, that I had pushed down. I'm a nice guy, don't you know that? The world is full of idiots, but I ain't one of them, That's the shadow part that we're trying to get at. He says the shadow is not evil per se, though much evil derives from it. Rather, the shadow embodies the contrarian dimensions of our souls. It's a bit of a mouthful. The opposites that reside within us. I'm this and I'm that. I'm good and I'm bad. Very positive, I'm quite negative. How do you get a shadow? I mean, I'm just talking in the physical world. A shadow is cast by what? By light. If you don't have light, you're not going to have a shadow. A shadow contrarian side, the darker side, the side that doesn't measure up to my own self-image of who I think I am. He said, put most succinctly, what is wrong in the world is wrong in us as well. As the Latin playwright Terence said over 2 millennia ago, 2,000 years ago, nothing human is alien to me. Nothing human is alien to me. That if it's a part of humanity, it exists within me, but I may not be, and probably am not, at all aware of it. So the work, he says, of improving the world begins in my own backyard. And this goes straight to the heart of the Oxford group and straight to the heart of what recovery is about. I've mentioned this before, but in studying the Oxford group material, I just came across some people who had reduced what I would say are 12 steps to 3 simple words. The first 3 steps being connection, joining with, but then the whole next set of steps 4 through 9, connection phase 1, 2, 3. We're out there in the cold. We're not a part of the human race, we're very much alone. And then we join recovery. We turn our will and our lives over to this God that we don't understand, but we make that decision. That's the connection part. And now comes the real work, and that is the correction phase. If I'm going to join with this God who is absolute honesty, purity, unselfishness, and love, if that's going to be the standard that I'm going to learn to live by, then there's a whole lot of correction that has to go on in me. And this is why we do the inventory, why we share that with another person, why we do step 6 and 7, 8 and 9. It's the correcting of how I am out of whack in my relationships with God, with you, and with my true self. Correction. Shadow work. Another name for it. The shadow manifests in 4 interactive fields. First, he says, it is most commonly unconscious and therefore spills into the world, into our relationships, onto our children, unconsciously. We only become aware of shadow infiltrations when we have to start dealing with their consequences. Why did I blow up yesterday? Why did I get so angry? All right? I wasn't myself, is what we say. Forgive me, I wasn't myself. Nonsense, of course you were. And I was myself. But I was an unconscious part of myself, an angry part of myself, a terribly lonely part of myself, a terribly frightened part of myself. This is shadow work. Jung says, you go and you meet the shadow, or the shadow is going to come and meet us. And this is such an integral part of depth psychology. So the second thing, so one is we be unconscious of it and just let it go at that. Second, we can disown our shadow by seeing it in others. This is projection. The person I blame, the people across the geographical border, those with different religions or skin color or cultures, All of bigotry, prejudice, and war comes from such projection. Happiness is finding somebody to pin the blame on. What does the literature say? It's a spiritual axiom that any time I'm disturbed, there's something wrong with me. Well, a lot of us try to live by the axiom, if I'm disturbed, there's somebody or thing or happening out there that I can blame it on. And that's real happiness, because then I never have to look at myself. So projection. And these are the things we've got to learn about ourselves. This is why Jungian psychology, depth psychology, can be so important. It's not just seeing what's wrong with me in a fourth step. That's important, all right? But seeing how that operates in me, how far back it goes in my life, that this is part of my psychic makeup. And I'd better be very, very watchful of this in going forward. Third way of dealing with shadow, I can become possessed by the shadow and swept along by its powerful energy. We can revel in our violence, our dangerous habits and behaviors. We can flaunt the norms like adolescents and smile while doing it. We just say, the hell with it. I am who I am, not with an awareness of what's going on, but kind of going over to the dark side. I think there's probably a phase of this that most of us, or many of us, go through, where we just kind of give in to the illness or give in to the shadow and just, this is who I am. Well, it isn't really who I am. It is who my shadow is. But I'm also burying there some of the beautiful things that I am, that you are, and that we're not manifesting, making real in the world, and through our own lives. Basic Jungian stuff, okay? And last, he says, we can become conscious of our shadow. And that, he says, is when the real work begins. Here he quotes a poet. The good news is, I know who I am. That's the bad news, too. I'm contradictions, all right? I'm not the greatest thing on the face of the earth, nor am I the worst thing that ever crawled out from under a rock, all right? I am some of this, and I am some of that. And the more comfortable I can become with the negatives in me, and the more comfortable I can become with the positives in me through shadow work, that's how I undergo real transformation. That's the correction phase of the program, and it's step 10 that is so important that we continue to watch our lives, continue to watch our emotions, continue to watch our shadow parts. Am I paying attention to them, or are they just coming up and grabbing me all of a sudden? In 1937, while speaking at Yale, Jung spoke of what happens to a person who takes on the shadow. Such a person, he says, has become a serious problem to himself, as he is now unable to say that they do this or that, they are wrong, and they must be fought against. Run out of people to blame. Such a man knows that what is wrong in the world is in himself. And if he only learns to deal with his own shadow, he has done something real for the world. He has succeeded in shouldering at least an infinitesimal part of the gigantic, unsolved social problems of our day. How can anyone see straight when he does not even see himself and the darkness he unconsciously carries with him into all his dealings. This is the work. This is the work of recovery. And let me tell you, it simply is not done when you do your first fourth step inventory. And I don't know that it's done if you even do it annually. It's help, I guess, to keep looking at it. But it's constant awareness of where am I coming from? One counselor up in Minnesota, he's passed away, but he said, who's driving the bus? Who's in charge of my life? Is it God? Is it my true self? Or is it a shadow part of me that has taken control? It goes back in our program to the Oxford group with Frank Bookman when he had that fight with his board of directors. He was angry as hell, projected all of the problems onto them, saw nothing in himself that he was responsible for until he had his conversion experience. And when he did, he saw the effects of pride in his life. And so he wrote letters of amends. This is where steps 8 and 9 came from. Wrote letters of amends to the 6 guys on the board who had wronged him in his mind. And he said, I harbored ill will against you. Please forgive me. I was the 7th wrong man. Took responsibility for his part. And that is the thing that we have got to learn and face, and you can do tremendous growing once we learn how to do that continuously in our lives. He says, admittedly, it is very hard to consider oneself the chief source of one's problems. All of us have been hurt, and hurt badly by life. That is a given. But what rises out of that is, of course, our story about the hurt. And then the pragmatic questions remain. What does that story make me do or keep me from doing? Shadow work involves examining our virtues, because there's a lot of good that's also down there in the basement, and as well as the opposite of our virtues, for they too are entering the world through us, though we may not know it without some sincere, humbling examination. Where does my jealousy assert itself? Where does my anger leak out? Where does my guilt push me down some long, dark alley? These questions are inherently humbling, and no one likes being humbled or having to admit culpability, responsibility. But until we do, our unaddressed life keeps entering the world. While a shadowless person is either an unconscious or a superficial person, dealing with our shadow is the only way we can bring a bit more freedom to those around us, our children, partners, neighbors, fellow citizens. What I am unwilling to face in myself will always be carried by someone else. Perhaps we're only here to help each other get through life. Unburdening our partners, children, neighbors by lifting our stuff off of them is one way to start. So, shadow work, absolutely core to Jungian psychology, and absolutely core, I believe, to 12-step recovery. We go and meet our shadow, or our shadow will come and meet us. Okay, guys, I think that's enough to swallow in one in one sitting. So we're going to break this into 2 parts. Keep looking at what it is that depth psychology has to offer. So I do hope some of these items were helpful to you, give you some more insight into how our unconscious mind affects us and what it is that we can do about it. So part 2 will be coming up in the next week. So hope you'll come back and finish it up. Thank you for listening. God bless, and keep coming back.